More than 200 years ago, a luminous baby appeared in China. From that moment on, the paranormal became normal, and dreams were no longer just dreams. Heroes, thought to exist only in comics, finally became reality. At a hospital in Musatafu, Japan. "What is the reason for your consultation, Mrs. Midoriya?" said a bald, mustachioed man wearing a doctor's coat and large glasses. "You see, it's been half a year since Izuku turned 4, and he still shows no signs of manifesting his quirk," replied a green-haired woman holding a small child. "Okay, I'll need you to accompany me to another room for the corresponding tests." The doctor stood up. "Follow me." Inko and her son, named Izuku Midoriya, followed the doctor to another room. 30 minutes later. "As you can see here," he pointed to an X-ray of a foot, "your son is missing a joint in his pinky toe, which means he does have a quirk," the doctor explained. "Yes, I can become a great hero, like All Might," Izuku shouted excitedly, holding up his All Might doll. "So why hasn't he manifested yet?" Inko asked doubtfully. "According to little Izuku's blood tests, we've learned that your son's quirk has already manifested." What the doctor said confused both green-haired girls. What happens is that Izuku's quirk is one of accumulation, that is, his body needs to store certain energy in order to use his quirk. Right now that energy is very scarce, so he can't do anything yet. Seeing that the green-haired girls were still confused, he continued, "Imagine a battery that doesn't even have the energy to turn on a flashlight, but as time goes by, its storage will fill up and you'll finally be able to turn on the flashlight. In this case, the battery is Izuku and the flashlight is his quirk." A look of understanding appeared on Inko's face. "That means we just have to wait until the battery charges so Izuku can use his quirk." "Exactly," the doctor nodded. "But how long will that take? And what kind of quirk will he have?" she asked a little worried. "Unfortunately, that's something we can't know. It could take days, weeks, months, or longer. Plus we don't have the technology yet to know exactly what kind of quirk he has. We could only determine that it was a hoarding one and that it was already active." The doctor stood up, walked to his desk and grabbed something from a drawer. "This is my card. If you have any questions you can call me." He handed her a card with a phone number and a name. "Now please I ask you to leave, I still have other patients to attend to." Inko stood up, thanked the doctor and left the hospital with a confused Izuku. While they were in the car, Izuku asked a question, "Mom, do I have a quirk?" "Of course you do, honey, it'll just take a little longer to appear." "Be patient," he replied, not taking his eyes off the road. "Yes, and when it appears, I'll become a great hero alongside Kachan." He started playing with his All Might doll, not knowing what awaited him at school. The next day at school. "Hey Izuku, what kind of quirk do you have? You went to the doctor yesterday to find out, right?" asked a red-eyed, ashen-haired boy. "Yes, Kachan, but I can't use it yet. My mom says I'll have to wait a while," Izuku replied, putting aside some blocks with letters. Okay, but hurry up. I still have to prove to you that my quirk is better than yours, and I can't do that if you can't use it." Without saying anything else, he sat down next to Izuku to play with the blocks. Months passed, and Izuku showed no signs of any peculiarity. Day after day, the little green-haired boy tried everything he could to show off some power, but it was all in vain. Inko decided to take him back to the doctor, but the response was the same as the first time. He needs to be patient. Izuku's school life didn't improve when everyone else had already revealed their quirks. He noticed that his classmates were starting to avoid and ignore him, even his best friend Bakugo Katsuki, whom he called Kachan, had distanced himself from him and was hanging out with another group of boys. It got worse when Bakugo started getting arrogant and making fun of his classmates just because his quirk was stronger than the others. At first it was just some mild insults, but it got worse and worse until it eventually resulted in physical abuse. At first, Bakugo would simply ignore Izuku, but the multiple times the green-haired boy tried to stop him from hitting another kid started to annoy him. When he finally got fed up with Izuku, he started hitting him too whenever he messed with him, but that didn't stop Izuku from standing up for others, even when they didn't thank him and ran away without helping him. Over time, Bakugo's bullying focused on Izuku, and he started calling him Deku, which was another way of saying his name, which meant useless. Because Izuku couldn't use his quirk, the other kids thought he was lying and that he was actually a quirkless. Time skip. It had been 2 years since Izuku and Inko had their first doctor's appointment. Now Izuku was in first grade at the same school as Bakugo and some of his classmates from the kindergarten he attended before. The latter spread the rumor that Izuku was quirkless, and although he tried to deny it, no one believed him when he couldn't display a single power. Izuku was currently sitting under the shade of a tree as he watched his classmates play in the schoolyard. On his lap lay a notebook with a crayon drawing of a pro hero Izuku had seen on television. Next to the drawing was the name of his quirk and a short description of what it did. Izuku's interest in quirks led him to have his own notebook where he wrote about the powers that seemed interesting to him, meaning all the ones he saw. Footsteps approaching him brought him out of his thoughts, and he turned his head to the side to see who was coming. Bakugo, along with two of his jackals, walked with his typical annoyed look towards Izuku, who quickly hid his notebook behind him. "Hey, trash Deku, didn't I tell you I never wanted to see you under my tree again?" Bakugo's scream made Izuku flinch and caught the attention of some of the nearby children. "Kachan, the tree isn't." The green-haired boy tried to refute but was interrupted. "Don't contradict me, you shitty Deku." Bakugo's angrier scream caught the attention of the rest of the children in the yard, who stopped their things to see what was happening. Bakugo loomed over Izuku's trembling body with a furious glare, while behind him his jackals had a malicious look. Sorry, I'm leaving now." Izuku held his notebook behind his back, hiding it from Bakugo. He stood up and tried to leave, but the blonde grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and shoved him against the tree. "Where do you think you're going? I'm not done with you yet." An explosion detonated in the tree next to Izuku's head. "I have to teach you that your place is with the trash so you never try to contradict me again." Izuku looked to his classmates who were watching the scene for help, but they all looked away. He groaned in pain when Bakugo grabbed his hair and began to slam his head against the tree. Izuku grabbed Bakugo's wrist to get him to let go, but both arms were held by the blonde's jackals. Bakugo smacked him in the face and kneed him in the stomach, knocking the wind out of Izuku. The children holding him kept him standing, otherwise he would have fallen to the ground. With his head down, he weakly tried to free his arms, but they were tightly held by the two boys. Bakugo, with a malicious smile, lifted Izuku's head and pulled his hair back. "This will be the last time you try to turn against me, damn Deku." His hand sparked with small explosions as he brought it closer to his face. Izuku panicked and his attempts to free himself became more desperate. When Bakugo's hand was mere inches from his face, Izuku managed to free his right arm. Instinctively, he pushed the blonde back, causing him to fall onto his butt. "Damn it, how dare you push me with your filthy hand?" "I'll get it," Bakugo said angrily as he stood up. With the help of his free arm, Izuku pushed the other boy holding him, managing to free himself completely. Both jackals tried to hold Izuku again, but were forcefully pushed back by Bakugo. "Say goodbye to your life, Deku," he raised both palms of his hands pointing directly at the green-haired boy. She was scared, her heartbeat was racing, her body was shaking uncontrollably, tears were falling involuntarily, her body was wet with sweat, so much so that it couldn't be normal. With a tingling sensation in both hands and the accumulated moisture, Izuku raised both arms to protect himself, ignoring how his palms were slightly redder than normal, almost as much as Bakugo's right now. The instant Bakugo detonated his blasts, another blast would be released from Izuku's palms. The resulting explosion pushed Bakugo back a couple of meters until he tumbled on the ground. On the other hand, the force of the explosion violently pushed Izuku's body against the tree, leaving him winded and falling to the ground very stunned. The two jackals were not affected, since they had moved away when they realized that Bakugo would use his quirk at full power. Slowly, Izuku got to his knees, hands on the ground. His arms felt numb and his vision blurred. Sitting up, he leaned his back against the tree and held his head. Little by little, his vision returned and he looked around. The other kids, who were initially crowding around to watch Bakugo hit him, were now taking steps back in fear. Turning her head to the side, she saw Bakugo's body lying on the ground. The explosion had caused him to hit his head on the ground and become unconscious. In the distance, she saw the teachers running toward them with worried faces. Feeling a panic attack brewing, Izuku scrambled to his feet and ran as fast as his tiny legs could carry him. He ran to the bathroom and hid in one of the stalls. He lowered the toilet seat and sat on it with his legs tucked up, crying. Time skip, 1 hour. Because Izuku had locked himself in the bathroom and the teachers hadn't been able to get him out, they had to call Inko to help. Inko rushed out of work when she received the call from school. Upon arriving, she was directed to the bathroom by one of Izuku's teachers while she told him what had happened, which had been captured on security cameras. When the teachers arrived, they left Inko alone in the bathroom to give them some privacy. "Izuku, honey, it's Mom. You don't have to open it if you don't want to, but you can tell me if you're okay. Aren't you hurt?" she said with a loving and kind tone that only a mother could have. "Mom? Is that you?" he asked, a little surprised that she was there. "That's right, baby. The school told me what happened, and I came to see how you were. Am I in trouble? He asked, a little scared. Of course not, Izuku. None of what happened was your fault. You were just scared, but there's no need to be any more because Mom is here, she reassured Izuku, and had to take a step back when the cubicle door slowly opened. Hi. Mom, he greeted, trying to put on a smile. Inko could feel her blood boil when she saw Izuku's condition. Besides the dirty clothes, Izuku had a bruise on his cheek and some minor burns on his arms. Without waiting a second, Inko launched herself into Izuku's arms, but had to stop when he winced in pain. Inko lifted his shirt and saw a purple circle growing on his stomach. Checking the rest of his body, she also found a lump on the back of his head, possibly from repeated head injuries. Izuku, I'm sorry, I couldn't protect you and you got hurt. She took Izuku's hands, ignoring how they were sweatier than usual, and bowed her head, letting tears fall. It's okay, Mom, it's not your fault. Inko looked up, only to see Izuku looking at her with a reassuring smile, even though he was crying too. Besides, look. She let go of one of his hands and raised it, staring at her palm until small explosions detonated in it. I have a quirk now. Now I can become a hero and I can protect you, she said, tears still streaming from her eyes. Izuku more delicately, Inko hugged her son and both let out their emotions supporting each other. After that, Inko took Izuku home, but not before yelling at all the teachers for not doing their jobs and at the principal for having such incompetent teachers. Inko took 3 days off from work to be with Izuku and treat his injuries, as well as to look into his new quirk. Time skip, 8.5 years old. The Midoriya's relationship with the Bakugo brothers had completely disintegrated after that incident in elementary school. Now Izuku is a senior in middle school. Although he initially switched classes, Bakugo and Izuku ended up in the same class throughout high school, but it would never be the same again, as Izuku now had a quirk with which to defend himself. Izuku named his quirk Perfect Copy. It allows him to permanently copy the quirks of the people he touches. Although there is a limit to the amount he can copy, he can also delete the quirks he has already copied to make room for a new quirk. He can currently copy 4 quirks. Every 2.5 years his body accumulates enough energy to be able to copy a new quirk. The last quirk slot he received shortly after his 14th birthday. A side effect of his quirk is that he has an insane interest in other people's powers, which led him to have multiple notebooks where he analyzed the most interesting quirks he saw and imagined what kind of combinations he could make to make it more powerful. Multiple times his curiosity got the better of him and he copied the person's quirk without them realizing it and used it himself, enjoying that he could experiment with all the powers he wanted. Izuku was currently sitting in his seat watching the teacher enter the classroom carrying some papers in one arm. You're already in 3rd year, so it's time you seriously thought about which academy you're going to go to, the teacher addressed the entire class with a serious look, only to smile and throw the papers away a second later. But you all want to go to the hero course, right? The entire class erupted in cheers and everyone activated their quirks, except for 2 people. Sensei, don't lump us all together. I won't stay at the back like all the other extras here, Bakugo said, causing the class to get annoyed and start booing him. You should all shut up like the extras you are. You'll be lucky if you end up as another shitty hero's support hero. The blonde exclaimed, angering his classmates even more. That's right, Bakugo, you're applying to UA. What the teacher said made the class fall silent and start murmuring about how difficult it was to get into UA. That's why you're just extras. Bakugo jumped up and pointed at himself. I passed the mock test. I'm the only one in this school who deserves to get into UA. I'll become the #1 hero and I'll definitely surpass All Might. Midoriya wants to go to UA too, right? The entire class fell silent and turned to look at Izuku, who got a little nervous at the sudden attention. Well, I guess it's not impossible for him, one of the students commented. He doesn't have a bad quirk, so he might have a chance, another agreed. Hee, thanks, Izuku said with a smile and scratching his head. Izuku and his classmates lived together normally. He didn't have any special friends, but he got along with almost everyone. Izuku jumped out of his seat just before Bakugo blew up his table with an explosion. You again, damn it. Who the hell do you think you are, trying to be on my level? I won't let you look down on me, you fucking shitty Deku, he shouted angrily, his hand smoking. You should stay with the trash, just like the rest of the worms in this school. Bakugo's reactions to Izuku had become more volatile since what happened in elementary school. What angered him the most was seeing how Izuku was able to fearlessly face him with his gaze. Even when he had defeated him on multiple occasions, he never faltered when facing him directly. All since his quirk awakened. Stop, Bakugo, I don't want to fight you, Izuku tried, uselessly, to appease his former best friend, especially since his teammates were too close and could get hurt. Don't tell me what to do, trash. Don't think for a second that you're on my level just because you copy the quirk of useless people to help you, he said, taking a step towards Izuku, his hands exploding in small explosions. Bakugo Katsuki, stop. The teacher said in a firm tone. Don't make me have to write a report on your behavior. Bakugo's body froze upon hearing this. Midoriya, go to Class B and ask for an extra table. Izuku nodded and left the classroom to go to his neighboring class. With gritted teeth, white knuckles, and stomping, Bakugo returned to his seat, giving his teacher a furious glare. Once the conflict was over and Izuku had a new table, the class continued normally. The school day was over and the students were leaving their classrooms. Izuku was sitting at his desk watching the latest villain attack that happened that morning on his cell phone. The fight between Kamui and the giant villain was great. It's a good thing I was there to see it. The way Kamui used his branches to increase his mobility was very skillful. If used in conjunction with another grass-type quirk, it might increase his resistance and usefulness, although it would be best to counteract his weakness to fire, he muttered as he put away his notebooks. Before he could put away his quirk notebook, it was snatched from his hand. He raised his head and saw Bakugo looking at him contemptuously while holding his notebook. What do you have there, Katsuki? One of Bakugo's new jackals asked. Before Bakugo could hand over the notebook, it was yanked from his hand by an invisible force and into Izuku's. I don't know what you were trying to do, but don't ever touch my notebook again, Bakugo. Izuku gave him a serious and slightly angry look as he put his notebook in his backpack and closed it. He stood up and turned to leave, but Bakugo stopped him. Where do you think you're going? I'm not done talking to you yet, Deku. Izuku turned around and looked at him seriously. Be brief, I have things to do. Bakugo clicked his tongue in irritation. Many of the great heroes have great origin stories about their high school. I want to shine being the only one who got into UA from this mediocre school. What can I say, I'm a perfectionist. Izuku just watched the explosive blonde's ramblings bored. So, don't apply to UA, Deku. Bakugo placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder, and his jacket began to smoke. Izuku slapped Bakugo's hand away. What makes you think you can tell me what to do? Bakugo's frown deepened and his palms began to smoke. I know what you're trying to do. Intimidating me won't work. It's not like when we were kids, Izuku replied firmly. Bakugo's palms erupted in small explosions and his jackals took a few steps back. Izuku's left hand moved discreetly and grabbed the back of his chair, which had a steel frame. Don't get in my way, Deku, or I'll kill you. Bakugo bumped shoulders with Izuku and left the classroom. When Bakugo and his jackals finally left the classroom, Izuku let out a sigh he didn't know he was holding. Damn, and I wanted to have a quiet day. He turned to leave as well. This time he managed to contain himself, but if he had been more upset he wouldn't have cared if you were there, he thought as he walked out and saw a security camera in a corner. As he walked down the hallway of his school he could see how his left hand had a metallic color that extended beyond the wrist. The steel material disappeared from his hand, leaving it completely normal. The quirks that Izuku currently has are: Mimicry, allows it to become the materials it touches. Object Attraction, allows him to attract light objects towards him, Inko's quirk. Muscle Overload, increases the musculature of your body for a limited time. Sonic Scream, expels various powerful sonic waves through its mouth. I took the fourth upper moon of Kimetsu no Yaiba as a reference. After leaving school, Izuku took his usual route home, which passed under a bridge. Halfway through the tunnel, he heard the sound of something metallic hitting the ground. Turning around, he saw a kind of dark green mud rising above him. Eyes and a malicious smile appeared in the mud and fixed on Izuku. A medium-sized invisibility cloak, looks like it's my lucky day. Izuku tried to run from what appeared to be a villain, but he barely made it a few steps before the entire mass of mud crushed him from above. The mud villain lifted his body off the ground, leaving him without a place to stand, and began to enter through his mouth. Unable to breathe, Izuku tried to remove the mud from his mouth, but his grip kept slipping in the villain's liquid body. Adrenaline coursed through his systems, increasing his analytical ability to search for a way out of the attack. He tried to copy the villain's quirk, but his quirk didn't react when it touched the mud, so that's out of the question. He overused his muscles, and the flesh around his jaw swelled from the increased number of muscle fibers. Using all his strength, he managed to close his jaw, cutting off the mud's access to his system. His body shuddered in pain as he felt the mud run down his throat. My, how clever you are, but how long do you think that'll last? Said the villain's mouth on top of Izuku. Izuku ignored the villain's words and strengthened the muscle fibers in his arms. He pressed the top of his face with both palms and began to lower himself, pushing the mud from his mouth down. No, that's not done, just relax. If you don't resist, it will only take 45 seconds, and after that you'll feel great. 2 tendrils of mud grabbed both of his arms and lifted him over his head. Izuku tried to struggle, but it was no use. 2 more tendrils appeared and grabbed Izuku's head. One from his forehead to the back, and another from his chin down. His jaw muscles increased in resistance to what the villain was trying to do, but it wasn't enough. Both tendrils pulled hard, slowly opening Izuku's mouth. Without waiting any longer, he tried to re-enter, not noticing the glow in Izuku's mouth. A loud sonic scream erupted from Izuku's mouth, destroying the mud tendril that was about to enter. The loud sound destabilized the mud villain, and Izuku seized his opportunity. He increased the muscle fibers in both arms, to the point that he felt his bones being crushed by the force and his skin was about to tear from the inhuman size of the muscles, and using all his strength he freed them from the mud. His heart was racing, trying to find a way to survive. Being able to breathe helped him think better, but he wouldn't last long if he didn't do something. He scanned the tunnel for something he could use, but there was nothing. Izuku's time was running out, and he could feel it as the pressure of the mud on his body began to increase. He desperately thought about what he could do to harm the villain, but nothing came to mind. Physical attacks were useless against his liquid body, and he would destroy his throat before he could hurt him without aiming his sonic scream directly at him, but to do that, he would need to break free. Izuku's eyes widened as he remembered something he saw in the villain. That scream caught me by surprise. I thought your quirk was something like muscle enhancement, but it doesn't matter anymore. I don't have time and I'm going to end this now. The villain's mud wrapped around Izuku's body, pressing on his chest and stomach. The tendrils took over his head again and opened his mouth. The mud quickly entered before Izuku could use his sonic scream again. This wouldn't be happening if you hadn't resisted, but you forced me to do it. Now you will suffer while you die, said the villain, feeling his body making its way through Izuku's throat. With his consciousness fading and no other choice, Izuku put his plan into motion. He felt his bone crunch beneath the new layer of muscle fibers and his skin bleed as it tore. Using all his strength, he pulled his right arm out of the mud, palm facing upward. The villain's confused expression turned into one of utter disbelief as his eyes were drawn by an invisible force to Izuku's palm. A light layer of mud still joined the eyeball to the rest of the body, but it wasn't enough to move it. With the visual organ in his hand, Izuku acted without hesitation, and before the villain could do so, something crushed it with his hand. The constant flow of mud through Izuku's mouth stopped, as did the rest of the mud villain's body. Giving Izuku the chance to close his throat again, severing the mud connection, and spit/cough out the remaining mud in his mouth, allowing him to breathe once more. The villain's scream of pure pain alerted Izuku again. Ah, damn it. The villain's body shook and began to slam against the tunnel walls. Izuku felt the pressure on his body increase considerably. He could feel his right arm breaking under the intense pressure. The rest of his bones fared no better. His left femur was snapped in two, one by one the ribs were breaking, and the bone in his left arm would have suffered the same fate, but Izuku took advantage of the villain's movement to touch the wall and turn his body into concrete, thus relieving the intense pressure. The villain thrashed for a few seconds, and finally spat Izuku out forcefully, sending him slamming into the wall, cracking it upon impact. You, damn you, I don't care about your body anymore. I'll make you suffer so much you'll wish you were dead. The villain declared as he launched multiple tendrils to strike Izuku. Using his good leg and the wall for support, Izuku stood up, watching the tendrils fly towards him. Taking a deep breath, he prepared to use his quirk. Yellowish energy glowed from his throat again, building up the necessary energy. The loudest sonic scream Izuku had used since copying the quirk 2 weeks ago came from his mouth in the direction of the villain. The sound traveled through the air, shattering the mud strands until it impacted the main body. The villain screamed in agony as his body writhed in pain and slowly began to disintegrate. Izuku tried to continue using sonic scream despite the pain in his already damaged throat from the mud, but his body had already reached its limit. He fell to his knees, leaning on his good arm, wincing at the pain of his broken bones. He began to cough up blood, causing severe pain in his throat. He continued like this for a few seconds until the sound of the mud moving made him slowly look up. Terrified, he saw the villain reincarnating and giving him a hateful look. The movement of a shadow in the corner of his eye caught his attention, and when he turned around, he felt his body relax and a slight smile, along with tears, stained his face when he saw the person who had arrived. Don't be afraid, boy, because I am here. It's been 3 days since the mud villain's attack. Izuku is currently standing at the entrance to what used to be a beautiful beach and now looks like nothing more than a garbage dump. He remembered the day he woke up in the hospital with his mother. The doctors told him he was attacked by a villain and was badly injured, but luckily All Might took him to the hospital in time. They explained how they performed a gastric lavage to get rid of the sludge in his system. His bones were also completely healed after a couple of sessions with healing quirks. Despite that, his throat was still delicate, so he couldn't talk much at the time. And since he was no longer in serious condition, he was sent home, where he was told he should rest and wait for his throat to heal itself. However, Izuku didn't want to wait. He copied the healing quirk from one of the doctors and replaced it with the sonic scream, not wanting to use it anymore anyway. Using his new quirk, he completely healed his throat, and he kept it because it would be useful for what he planned. New quirk. Revitalization. Increases a person's healing speed upon contact. It's not as strong as Recovery Girls, but it's useful for minor wounds, tears, and injuries. Izuku's POV. In my first encounter with a villain, I almost lost my life because I wasn't strong enough. If I can't save myself, then how will I save others when they're in danger? How can I become a hero if I can't do anything when the villain catches me? I swore to myself that will never happen again, which is why I'm here, standing in this place. This will be where I will do my training for the next 10 months until the UA entrance exam. But for that, I will need better quirks to help me develop. I take a walk along the trash-strewn beach to see how far all the waste extends. As I walk, I take a piece of paper out of my pocket. I unfold it and reread the apology sent from All Might's agency. It says the number one hero deeply apologizes and, as compensation for the damages caused by his carelessness, he will give us a sum that I couldn't refuse. My mother decided to give me all the money, since she says I was the one most affected by what happened. With the help of the money I will buy what I need to make myself stronger. The following week after visiting the beach, I looked for training tricks that would be useful. I found 3 that I found useful and copied them. Solar charging. It gives me the ability to absorb light energy and convert it into physical energy. I copied this from a surfer at another beach. Being on a beach where the sun beats down almost daily, this quirk would help me get less tired. Rapid growth. Increases muscle mass gain during exercise. I copied this from someone who used to go to the gym. This quirk, along with solar recharging and revitalization, will allow me to do very effective physical training, giving me the ability to train at 100% of my capacity every day, without having to worry about muscle pain or physical fatigue. The last quirk I copied is called Great Armor, covers my body with heavy, medieval-style armor. Unfortunately, it didn't come with a sword and shield, that was part of the hero's support equipment. It does grant me mild super strength. However, what really stands out is the armor's great defense. I copied it from a top 15 hero. It was difficult to touch him, but I got my chance when he deactivated his quirk on his head to take photos with his fans. I chose this quirk so I could better defend myself if another villain attacked me. Fortunately, none of that happened, and its main use was fighting Bakugo, although little by little his aggression toward others calmed down, probably because he didn't want a stain on his perfect record. For the next 8 months, I trained hard every day, cleaning the trash-filled beach and performing other exercises to increase my agility and speed. By becoming physically stronger, I'll be able to better adapt to the traits I choose to copy, as many of them put a heavy physical strain on the wearer's body. After finishing cleaning the beach, I took a week-long mental break to relax and clear my mind. After that, I resumed my training, although less intensely than before. I used the free time to research quirks I could use in the UA practical exam. My search focused on pro heroes, as their quirks are typically more suited to combat. After 2 months, just days before the entrance exam, I managed to copy the quirks I wanted. I chose ones that could be enhanced when used together, so they would have a better effect. Super Strength gives me a considerable increase in all my physical abilities. Mutant quirk copied from Death Arms. Attack Projection allows me to project my attacks from a distance with the same force and speed as I hit. It doesn't affect the body in any way, meaning I can use it until I run out, but it has a 2-second cooldown. This emitter quirk is copied from a low-ranked hero called Phantom Blow. Booster Disc generates a hollow energy disc on any part of my body or people with which I have physical contact. This disc generates an instant boost in any direction I want. The force generated by the disc and the boost generates a backlash on the body part that was used with the same force, to the point that it can fracture a limb if I don't use it carefully. However, the Super Strength quirk also increases my resistance, allowing me to use the quirk without problems. Emitter quirk copied from a hero outside the top 100 called the Driving Force. Infrared Vision I can see infrared radiation produced by objects, i.e., temperature. If I use it too much, my eyes start to burn. Transformational quirk copied from a civilian. With this combination of quirks that increases my strength, mobility, reach and tracking, I'm almost certain that I'll pass the practical exam, but I still can't help but tremble with nervousness when I see the imposing doors of the UA. And Izuku's POV. After standing there for a few minutes admiring the enormous institution, Izuku decides it's time to head inside. He walks around, unable to help but look around in case a pro hero is around. After all the teachers at UA are pro heroes, even the principal and the head of the medical staff. He returns his gaze to the front just in time to see how the blonde girl who was in front of him trips on an uneven floor. Acting without thinking, he moves and grabs her arm to keep her from falling. "Are you okay?" Izuku asked, pulling her back to stand up straight. "Yes, thanks for saving me," said the girl, turning to see her savior. Green and blue met, and Izuku couldn't help but get lost in the girl's eyes. "Yeah, it's fine, it would have been bad luck if you fell before the exam." He looked away from the blonde's gaze to look elsewhere, slightly blushing. "My name is Melissa Shield, nice to meet you." Melissa offered him a hand. Coming out of his stupor, Izuku returned the gesture and they both shook hands. "I'm Midoriya Izuku." After introducing themselves, they both entered the UA while talking about trivial things. When they reached the auditorium, they separated, and each went to their seats. The theoretical exam is over and everyone is sitting in their seats waiting for the explanation of the practical exam. The auditorium lights go out, leaving only the stage illuminated. Present Mike gets up on stage and walks to the center. "I want you to give me a hey," exclaimed the hero trying to lighten the mood, but when he didn't receive any response he shrugged his shoulders. What a refined public. "Alright, let's start with the show," he shouted, the last part making the applicants pay more attention to him. "The practical exam will consist of 10 minutes, where you will be involved in an urban battle." The screen behind him came to life and showed the holographic image of a city. You will be divided into different testing centers. During the 10 minutes that the exam lasts you will fight against robots that only seek to end your lives. Your objective is to neutralize them. The image of the city changed and showed 3 different types of robots. There are 1, 2, and 3-point robots. The 36 applicants with the most points will pass the exam. He stopped his speech when he saw an applicant raise his hand. "Yeah?" Applicant number 7111. A tall, blue-haired teenager stood up. "The brochure that was given to us clearly shows 4 types of robots. If this is a printing error, then UA, the best hero academy in the country, should be ashamed. We are here because this is the best of the best, and this kind of error is not tolerable," he said with a stern tone. "And you?" He turned around and pointed at Izuku. "You've been muttering the whole time, it's annoying. If you can't take this seriously, then you shouldn't be here," he scolded the green-haired man. "I'm sorry," Izuku apologized, a little embarrassed to be the center of attention. "Thank you very much for your contribution, applicant 7111. The 4th villain is worth 0 points." The image of the 3 robots disappeared and a larger silhouette of the 4th robot appeared. "There will be 1 in each testing center. It's an obstacle I recommend you avoid. It's not impossible to beat, but you gain nothing by doing so. And lastly, any non-heroic attitude is not allowed. You cannot attack or interfere with other applicants. That's all. Go further. Plus ultra he shouted euphorically, but no one did the same. Party pooper." Izuku and the other applicants were directed to their testing centers via buses. Upon arrival, everyone got off and gathered in front of the large gate. It's clear UA doesn't spare any expense with its entrance exams. This is huge, Izuku thought, looking at the enormous gate and the great walls surrounding the fake city. Passing through the applicants, he managed to get in front of the gate. "Let's see what it has," he mused, placing a hand on the enormous gate and activating his infrared vision. His eyes changed from green to red, and his vision turned blue. Within the blue space, he could see various red and orange dots moving randomly. They were probably the robots gathered in groups throughout the city. He couldn't quite make out how far away they were, but he could approximate them by the size of the spots. The sound of an argument brought him out of his thoughts, and he turned to see what was happening, but due to his infrared vision, he could only see orange, and in some cases, red, human-shaped silhouettes. He deactivated his quirk, allowing him to see more clearly what was happening. The blue-haired man who scolded him for muttering was talking to Melissa with a slightly angry expression. Confused, he came closer so he could hear what was happening better. "If you're here to distract us, it's best if you leave. If you're taking this exam as a game, then you shouldn't be here," said the blue-haired man with a stern attitude. Izuku was about to intervene, but Melissa didn't stay silent. "With all due respect, who the hell do you think you are?" telling me what I can or can't do. The blue-haired man's mortified expression at the rudeness almost made Izuku laugh. You don't have the right to demand that any of us not be able to take the exam. We all work hard to be here. And if our nervousness or muttering bothers you, that's not our problem, Melissa exclaimed with an irritated expression. Izuku was a little surprised when she mentioned the muttering. Apparently, she had seen that he was the one being scolded in the auditorium. Melissa was going to continue speaking, but the sound of the doors opening silenced everyone. Okay, it's time to start. President Mike's voice came through a speaker. What's going on? In real life, there's no countdown. Run, 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 he said again when he saw that no one had moved. As if a switch had been activated simultaneously, everyone rushed into the fake city, searching for the robots they were meant to destroy. The blue-haired boy from before quickly took the lead with his leg motors. As he ran, Izuku summoned 2 boost discs on both of his feet. The force of the discs carried him farther than the blue-haired boy in the blink of an eye. Despite his greater stamina, he could feel the kickback in his legs, like a slight numbness from using the boost disc at full power to gain the advantage. With the slight advantage gained, he ran and searched for as many robots gathered together as possible with his infrared vision. He crossed the first, second, and third blocks with small bursts. Just before reaching the 4th block, he powerfully leapt upward. While in the air, he saw the large number of robots gathered on the single-lane street. At least 8 1-point robots, 6 2-point robots, and 5 3-point robots. All on a single block. In a dark room with multiple monitors showing applicants running around the city in search of robots. How did that boy know where the largest concentration of robots was? A confused female voice said. It doesn't seem like he has any tracking quirk, considering he recently used a boost quirk, commented a man with gray skin and a rectangular body. Izuku Midoriya. Quirk, perfect copy. Allows him to permanently copy the quirk of anyone he comes into contact with. Currently, he has a limit of 4 quirks, but this will increase over time, explained a white rodent reading some papers. It seems that this year we will have another interesting curious student. The rodent's eyes looked with excitement and expectation at the green-haired man in the air. Izuku moved his body in the air and used a booster disc to land on top of a 1-point robot, crushing it. With their target already determined, the 1 and 2-point robots went to attack, while the 3-point robots fired from a distance. Izuku jumped off the 1-point attack and crushed its head with a hammer blow. He ripped off the robot's arm and used it as a shield for the onslaught of a 2-point. The robot tried to hit him with its tail from above, but Izuku used a boost disc to jump up and cut it off with a blow. While in the air, he used a boost disc again to land hard on the robot's head. He jumped off the 2-point to dodge the 3-point's bullets. 1-point tried to hit him, but Izuku stopped his attack with one hand and with the other he pierced his chest. He ripped the metal plate off 1-point's arm and threw it at a 2-point that was about to attack him, making it explode. Blue energy gathered in Izuku's fist, and he punched the air towards a 3-pointer. The blue energy traveled through the air and hit the 3-pointer, causing it to explode. So Izuku continued fighting fiercely for 3 minutes. He used all of his offensive quirks together to destroy the robots much more easily. When he finished, he paused to take a breath and take a tally of what he had now. That's 35 points. He used infrared vision again to identify where more robots were. When he found them, he quickly went to their location to destroy them. It had already been 7 minutes of the practical exam and Izuku had just destroyed another horde of robots. 83 points, he said, dropping onto the roof of a building while gasping for air. Izuku felt his muscles burning from the great physical exhaustion, and the exhaustion from using 3 quirks constantly hit him. In the distance, he saw Melissa hitting a pair of robots. Izuku realized that she was also exhausted by her weak movements, but she still continued hitting the robots with such force that it pierced their armor. Activating infrared vision, he saw how her arm slightly increased its temperature before striking. Apparently she concentrates her power in one limb before striking, Izuku thought, starting to stand up. There are still a little over 2 minutes left, I'll see what I can get out there, he said to himself, about to get down the building. A loud bang echoed throughout the fake city, and the ground shook, nearly causing Izuku to fall. He turned around and saw a massive robot even bigger than the buildings themselves. This has to be a joke. The robot's fist slammed into the ground, sending dust and debris flying toward the applicants, who began to flee in fear. Izuku was about to do the same, but stopped when he saw that Melissa wasn't moving and was staring at a spot in the rubble. He activated infrared vision and saw, through the cloud of dust, a hot spot where Melissa was looking. Someone was trapped in the debris. By the time he realized what he was doing, he was running at full speed, jumping from building to building in the direction of the robot. Melissa was running as fast as she could. Unconsciously, she kept the OFA active and her legs constantly at 5%. She was still a bit far from the girl trapped under the rubble. She thought about finishing off the 0-point robot using 100%, even if that would break her arms, but she saw the robot raise its hand and bring it down to crush the girl. She wasn't going to be able to hit the robot before it crushed her, so she decided to change targets. On her last step, she flexed her legs and focused all the power she had into them. "Don't stop, I'll take care of her," Izuku shouted, jumping off the building. He realized Melissa was going for the robot first, which made him think he had some way to stop it. He used the booster disc at full power and shot directly at the trapped girl. Seeing that Izuku was about to help the girl, Melissa changed her target. Unleashing the full power of her legs, she was sent hurtling toward the robot's head. Izuku landed right next to the girl. He raised his arms and caught the robot's large hand. Izuku's legs couldn't support the heavy weight, and he ended up falling backward to the ground. He constantly used the boost disc at full power on the robot's hand to push it up and prevent it from crushing them. Melissa's right arm flashed with red lines, causing the sleeve of her jacket to disintegrate. Her body traveled like a bullet toward the robot's head. "Smash!" she shouted, landing with her powerful attack. The enormous robot's head jerked back, and chain explosions erupted inside it. As the robot's arm withdrew, Izuku quickly stood up and freed the girl from the rubble. He carried her in his arms and jumped just before a massive metal plate fell where they stood. He leaned the girl against the wall of a building and looked back to see the robot falling to the ground. Another side effect of his quirk is that every time he saw another powerful quirk, he felt the need to have it for himself. He had managed to control his urges to not run up to people and copy their quirks, but the feeling still prevailed. That's exactly what Izuku feels now when he sees Melissa's enormous destructive power. A force capable of comparing to All Might himself. It was truly very tempting. He was brought out of his thoughts when he heard the voice of the girl he had rescued. "I think something's not right with her." Izuku turned to look at her upon hearing it, then looked at Melissa. She wasn't bracing herself for landing, and her movements were erratic as she fell. He realized what was happening when he saw the unnatural movements of her limbs. They were broken. He was about to go help her, but his right leg buckled on the first step, and he fell to the ground in great pain. He looked down at his leg and saw how swollen and purple it was. The leg was broken. He looked back at Melissa and realized it wasn't long before she hit the ground. He cursed his bad luck when the side effects of using multiple physical quirks in a short period of time and without rest hit him like a speeding train at the worst possible moment. The muscles in his arms contracted in a sharp cramp. At that moment, Izuku realized it was the side effect of attack projection. He had never used it that much and falsely assumed it had no side effects other than the energy drain. All of this happened in less than a second, and the girl had noticed Izuku's poor condition. "I can help you," she caught Izuku's attention. "Do the same thing you did when you propelled yourself to where I was. I'll make things easier for you," the girl said, crawling towards him. There was no time to think. There were less than 30 meters left until Melissa hit the ground. Izuku activated the booster disc on his left leg, and when the girl touched him, he felt as if his weight no longer existed. Before the girl could withdraw her hand, Izuku forced his left arm to move and managed to touch her. The force of the boost disc carried him hurtling through the air, eventually intercepting Melissa 10 meters above the ground. He touched her with the 5 pads on his fingertips and felt the downward acceleration stop. Using weak boost discs on his back, he halted their horizontal movement. When they finally stopped, he felt his weight return to him, and he fell 1 meter to the ground. Melissa, meanwhile, continued to float, still dazed from the collision with Izuku. The end of exam alarm rang out across the fake city and Izuku felt unconsciousness claim his body. Time skip 1 hour. Izuku slowly opened his eyes to the white ceiling of the room he was in. He sat up and saw that he was on a gurney in what appeared to be a well-equipped hospital room. He removed the sheet that was covering him and inspected his completely healed leg, as well as his arms. "How are you feeling, honey?" A kind woman's voice spoke to him. Izuku turned his head to see Recovery Girl sitting at a desk looking at him. I think I feel okay." "Nothing's broken anymore," Izuku replied, feeling his body. "Good," the small woman gave an irritated sigh as she stood up. "That stupid rat went too far that time. Not stopping the robot before it hit you was very reckless." "Do you mean if I hadn't been there, the robot would have crushed the other girl?" he asked in surprise. "I don't think so. The robot has safety systems restricting its movement. It most likely stopped just before doing so, but even so, letting it get to that point is completely unnecessary," he grumbled as he gave the green-haired man a routine inspection. "And how about Melissa and the other girl?" Are they okay? He remembered how Melissa's arms and legs were broken. Don't worry, they're both fine and they already went home. They wanted to stay to see how you were, but the exams were already over and no one else could be here. Recovery girl finished checking on Izuku and returned to her desk. If you feel okay, you can leave. You're probably a little tired from using my quirk, so I recommend not doing any physical activity until tomorrow. She took some gummies out of a drawer and handed them to Izuku. The green-haired boy got out of bed and grabbed the gummies, then put them in his mouth and ate them. The test results will come back in 2 weeks, so be patient. Thank you very much, goodbye. She bowed in, thanks and left the room. After leaving UA, he headed to the train station. While he was sitting, he checked his quirks. The one belonging to the girl he had saved from the 0-point robot. It made anything she touched with her fingertips float. He saw her use it as she went from one place to another looking for robots. It had great lifting power. He replaced it with infrared vision. Recovery Girl's Quirk. Recovery. Possibly one of the most powerful healing quirks in all of Japan. She traded it for a booster disc. The one he was most interested in. Melissa's Quirk. A seemingly super strength quirk, but with power as destructive as All Might's. Even if his normal body couldn't withstand it, he'd just have to find a few quirks to help him do so. Such power would be completely worth wasting his other 3 quirk slots just for quirks that would help him withstand the backlash. He traded it for the attack projection quirk. He got off at a stop and headed straight for Daboga Beach. He couldn't wait to use such a great quirk, and his tiredness wasn't going to stop him. He stepped onto the sand and took a breath to calm his excitement. He felt the peculiarities inside him and grabbed Melissa's. He deactivated the mutant super strength quirk so it wouldn't affect anything. He focused on the quirk he now had in his hands and activated it. Red lines glowed on his right arm and spread throughout the limb. Izuku didn't feel anything besides a bit of heat, but he didn't think anything of it. He pulled his arm back and punched the air with all his might. He waited for a burst of power that would split the sea in two and cause hurricanes, but nothing happened. Confused, he looked at his arm, which still had the red lines. He tried again, but the result was the same. Again. 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 Nothing changed. He activated the quirk on his entire body, and was thrilled again when the red lines disappeared and green lightning crackled around him in their place. He didn't see those lightning bolts on Melissa, but he didn't care. He tried again one more time, but when nothing changed, he collapsed back onto the sand, disappointed and tired. A stacking quirk. What bad luck.